Most people think laziness looks like sleep. It doesn't. Sometimes laziness looks like ambition. Big plans, big goals, big visions, and one quiet sentence repeated every day. I'll start tomorrow. That sentence has ruined more lives than failure ever did. Because failure hurts once, but tomorrow steals from you slowly. If you have ever felt full of potential and disgusted by your own inconsistency, listen carefully. Because in an old mountain province, there lived a young warrior named Ren, and he nearly wasted his entire life for the same reason. Not because he lacked talent, because he kept postponing the price. Ren wanted to become the greatest archer in his province. He imagined people speaking his name with respect. He pictured himself calm in battle, precise, feared, unshakable. He collected scrolls about war, studied breathing, polished arrows, asked endless questions, and whenever others spoke of discipline, Ren nodded as if he already belonged among them. But each morning, when it was time to practice, something changed. If the air was cold, he told himself tomorrow would be better. If his body felt heavy, he said proper training required the right energy. If he missed his first few shots, he decided the day had already been wasted. So he returned home and promised himself he would begin seriously tomorrow. 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 Years moved quietly like this. And the most painful part was not that Ren lacked ability. It was that weaker students passed him. Boys who once admired him began outranking him. Hands less gifted than his became steadier than his. Not because they dreamed bigger, because they returned more often. And deep down, Ren knew something terrible. He was not losing to others. He was losing to the version of himself that kept asking for one more day. This is the trap ambitious people rarely understand. The imagination can comfort you so well that it begins to replace action. Planning feels productive. Talking feels noble. Research feels responsible. But none of those things force you to face resistance. And because they feel close to progress, you can spend years circling the work without ever touching it. That was Ren's real problem. He did not hate effort. He hated beginning. He hated the moment where fantasy ends and reality answers back. Because reality does not care about intention. Reality only responds to repetition. One winter morning, Ren walked past the training yard without entering. Again, at the far end of the courtyard, an old bow master was splitting bamboo. His name was Master Harrow. He had trained warriors for decades. He looked at Ren once and said, "You carry the face of a man defeated by a battle. He has not even fought." Ren stopped. Something in those words landed harder than criticism. He bowed his head and admitted the truth. "I want greatness," he said, "but I do not trust myself to work for it." Master Harrow said nothing. He stood, set down the bamboo, and told Ren to follow him. They walked beyond the yard, to a dark cliff where water fell, one drop at a time, from a crack in the stone. The master pointed at the rock. There in the center was a hollow, a small wound in solid stone. This hole, the master said, was not made by force. Ren looked closer. The drops kept falling. Soft, small, Almost nothing. Then the master spoke again. Water is weaker than stone in a single moment. But the water returns. Stone does not. Ren stayed silent, and the old man turned to him. That is why you keep losing. You keep trying to become strong in a single mood. But strength does not belong to intensity. It belongs to return. Ren expected a complicated method, a secret breathing pattern, a warrior ritual. Instead, the master gave him one rule. Beginning tomorrow, he said, release one arrow before sunrise. Ren frowned. One arrow. One, the master said. If you feel strong, release 10. If you feel weak, release 1. If it rains, release 1. If your mind is restless, release 1. If you are ashamed of yesterday, release 1. But never allow a day to end without that arrow leaving the string. Ren almost laughed. It sounded too small, too simple, too insignificant. The master saw the doubt in his face. That is exactly why it will work, he said. Your excuses feed on size. Starve them with something too small to refuse. Then he stepped closer. You do not need to prove your greatness. You need to prove your return. The next morning, before sunrise, Ren stood in the cold yard. His fingers were stiff. His breath shook. He wanted to go back inside. Instead, he knocked one arrow, drew the string, and released. The shot was poor. He did not care. The rule was complete. The next morning, he returned. And the next. And the next. Some days, he fired only one arrow. Some days, he stayed for 20. But the power was not in the number. It was in the return. Slowly, something changed. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Quietly. His hands stopped negotiating. His body learned the path, before his emotions approved it. The morning no longer began with a debate. It began with an arrow. Weeks passed, then months. His breathing became calmer, his posture stronger, his aim less violent, less desperate, more still. And the strangest thing happened. Ren stopped asking, "Do I feel motivated today?" He only asked, "Has the arrow been released?" That question changed his life, because it removed emotion from the doorway of action. When spring arrived, the province held its annual trial. Archers from every district gathered. The final test was simple. A bronze ring was suspended from a high beam. It moved with the wind. Many shooters were more flashy than Ren. Faster, louder, more confident. They struck hard, but several missed, because skill built for display breaks under pressure. Then Ren stepped forward. No speech, no drama, no need to impress. He had already done the hard part. For months in the dark, when nobody was watching, he raised the bow, breathed once, and released. The arrow passed cleanly through the ring. The courtyard went silent, not because the shot was miraculous, but because it was inevitable. It was the kind of shot that belongs to a man who has returned so many times. That pressure can no longer introduce itself. And in that moment, Ren understood something deeper. The real victory was not the applause. It was this. He no longer needed tomorrow to become who he wanted to be. He was already becoming him. Every morning. That is the lesson most ambitious people miss. Your problem is not that your dreams are too big. Your problem is that your commitment is too fragile. You keep waiting for a version of yourself that feels ready, disciplined, inspired, certain. But that version is built by repetition, not by waiting. You do not become reliable by making bigger promises to yourself. You become reliable by keeping smaller ones, without fail. One page, one call, one paragraph, one workout set, 1 minute of focused work, one arrow before sunrise. The action can be small, but it must be real, because real action does something fantasy never can. It changes identity. And once identity changes, consistency becomes lighter. Not easy, lighter. So if you have been calling yourself lazy, be careful. You may not be lazy. You may simply be addicted to delay. And delay is broken. The same way stone is broken. Not by one violent blow, by repeated contact. Again, and again, and again. Do not promise yourself a perfect comeback. Do not build a giant plan tonight, just to abandon it tomorrow. Choose your one arrow. Choose the smallest action that still counts as truth. Then do it, before this day ends. Because your future is not being destroyed by failure. It is being shaped by what you keep postponing. And the moment you stop living in tomorrow, your life finally begins to move.